what 13 years old you looks like while getting that initial attack.
I started experiencing extreme abdomen pain. Like somebody had a really hot knife and was just stabbing me repeatedly.
As a parent, going to your kids and being like, how do you maneuver that? So I'm just curious what your mentality is for that.
Raising kids with this disease, a schedule. I'm telling you, I had to have a schedule.
Welcome to Rarely Discussed, an American Porphyria Foundation podcast with your hosts, Andrew McManamon
and Nicole Castellano.
We have porphyria, a rare disease. Rare diseases differ greatly but share many similarities in how they affect our lives.
Being rare can feel lonely and isolating, but we're stronger together. Join us in meaningful interviews with porphyria and rare disease experts and the patients and families impacted as we connect, learn, and heal together.
We'll talk diagnosis, treatment, pain, mental health, managing daily life, and everything rare. Today's guest is Ginger Davis, and her journey with acute intermittent porphyria is nothing short of devastating. Ginger experienced her very first attack at just 13 years old, but wouldn't receive a diagnosis until the age of 42. That's nearly 3 decades filled with misdiagnosis, ER visits, relentless pain, and the uncertainty that so many rare disease patients know all too well. Today, Ginger is here to bravely share her story, what she's been through, how AIP has changed her life, and what she wants others to know about living with this condition. Ginger, welcome to the Rarely Discussed podcast. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And a lot of times when it comes to patients coming on here and telling their stories, what I like to do is just rewind all the way to the very beginning. And if you have any recollection of what 13 years old you looks like while getting that initial attack. So if you could bring me back to that or your earliest memory of.
Yeah, so my parents, they divorced before I was, well, actually right after I was born. So at this time I was living with my father, which was great to start your period living with your father. And he did not have a significant other, so it was just me and dad. But I had started my period, and within, I can't remember if it was the day of or if it was that night, but um, I started experiencing extreme abdomen pain. Like somebody had a really hot knife and was just stabbing me repeatedly. And so I went to my dad and I was like, I told him what was going on. And of course, him being a man, and he's just, well, you get cramps when you have your period, that's normal. And I'm like, no, Dad, I'm telling you, there's no way this is normal.
Yeah.
So, um, but he kind of just brushed it off, that it was my period. And then when the pain lasted almost 2 months, um, my dad was like, okay, maybe something is wrong with her. But my dad's old school. I don't think my dad ever saw a doctor till he was on his dying bed. Um, but so he never took me to the doctor. He just said, talk to your mom about it. So I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, my mom told me, I remember my first few periods being really painful. And I'm like, Mom, like I can't walk painful. And so I was a dramatic child. I'm not going to say I wasn't. So I kind of got labeled by my parents as a hypochondriac, over exaggerating. It's too far from your heart to kill you. That's the type of parents that I had. And so they kind of just brushed it off. And then it was probably a couple periods after, it was just the abdomen pain. And then I had a period where I had the abdomen pain, I had the back pain, I had the chest pain, and I was throwing up. I had been throwing up everything I ate for over a week at this time. And, or no, it was like 2 weeks because I had been losing weight. And my dad was like, why are you losing weight? You know, what are you doing? And I was like, I've been sick, Dad, for 2 weeks. I can't keep anything down. And he thought I was forcing myself to puke because I was insecure about my weight. And after, I mean, it took a while. And he finally was like, okay, I think she's really sick, but he didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I think he took me to the doctor. I had at one point in the beginning, I had had a really bad attack, and he took me to the ER. And of course, they said she's constipated, and they sent me home. And I'm like, I was really frustrated. My dad was frustrated because he doesn't like to go to the doctors, and they're telling me he's fine. So that pretty much set the tone for my parents. Once I went that time, they were like, okay, she's just dramatic. She's fine. It's not going to kill her. So I pretty much at that point stopped talking about my pain to my parents, stopped talking to anybody really about my pain. I just, I just grinned through it. I mean, there was times on my period I literally, so many times I had to call out of school. Every time I started my period, I was calling my dad. I'm like, Dad, I can't do it. I'm throwing up. I'm in pain. And so that's just kind of how my dad treated it until I graduated high school. If I called and I had started my period at school, he would say, let her come home. I would walk home, and sometimes I would miss a full week. Sometimes I missed weeks and weeks upon time. And I ended up dropping out. I never graduated high school because of all the school that I missed. Um, and at that point, my dad's full on biker, and he had had another child, my brother, and my brother was very young at the time. And so he pretty much, after I finished my 10th grade, he's like, there's really no point for you to go to school because you miss. I mean, I might have went to school 6 times in a month because of the pain. So I ended up dropping out at 10th grade. I never finished high school due to this disease. And then, of course, I got married at 17. Um, I had my first daughter at 18. But my first pregnancy, no issues. Like that whole pregnancy was the first time since 13 where I wasn't in pain. Like I was not in pain. It was when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was like, this is the best thing ever. I want to be pregnant 24/7 because I wasn't in pain. I was fine.
Mm.
Um, I gave I gave birth to her. They actually took her on her due date because she was well developed. She was fine. She had no complications when she was born. Everything was fine. And then I decided to have another one. And it actually took me a little time to have another one, but I ended up getting pregnant with my second. My daughter was 2.5. So, but my second pregnancy was a whole different beast.
Mm.
I experienced pain from day one until almost, well, I can't even tell how long because I had my last three really close together. But once I gave birth to him, I was in pain all the way till I got pregnant again. And so I had three kids from Trisha was born '02, and my last child was born January '05. So pretty much within 3 years, I had three kids. And that whole time, I was in pain. I was throwing up. With each pregnancy, um, all three of my last children pre were early, were preemies. Um, with my two sons. So I had two girls and then two boys. So my last two pregnancies, it got so bad that they had to admit me at 5 months pregnant with each of them, and they give you steroids. Um, and it has to be at the around the 5 month mark because that's when the baby's developing their lungs and their heart. So they gave me steroids so that that would develop faster, so that if I had them early, they would be fine. And thankfully they did because I had them both very early. My third child, my son, he was due on Halloween, and I had him 6 weeks early. My fourth son, he was actually due the end of March, and I had him the end of January.
Hmm.
Um, every one of my kids, as I had more kids, they were all a pound lighter each time because every pregnancy, my nausea got worse and worse and worse. So, like my last pregnant, or no, my third pregnancy, I weighed 150 when I got pregnant with him. When I gave birth to him, I weighed 151 because I
Hmm.
had lost so much weight from the nausea and the pain that I was 1 pound over the weight I was when I got pregnant with him. But thankfully, he was fine. Both of my sons came out fine because they had the steroid shots. Um, the other thing is when I was admitted with my pregnancies to get the steroid shots to help the baby's lungs and heart, um, those two admissions, I had to stay for a week each time. And being on steroids, which I know now, some steroids are a big no-no with this disease. Not all steroids, but there are a few that not good. Um, I was having the worst hallucinations the whole week I was in there. Moss crawling on the walls, seeing things that weren't there, and it was really weird because I still have a lot of hallucinations to this day. But thankfully, I don't know if it's the Lord. I don't know what it is. But every time I hallucinate, thankfully, like I know I'm hallucinating. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I see something, I'm like, okay, I know this is my porphyria. That's not there. I know I'm hallucinating, which for the most part, most of my life was good because you hallucinate and you don't, I mean, I didn't know why it was happening at that point because I didn't know I had porphyria. But,
Hmm.
and as a child, I thought it was just, when I was a teenager, I thought it was just, I've always been a very imaginative kind of person. And that's kind of what I chalked it up to. Um,
Hmm.
and so after my pregnancies, after my last pregnancy, it was the worst. I thought I was suffering from severe postpartum depression. Um, I was to the point where I was, I literally got to such a deep depression. I remember being sitting on the floor of my closet and just my whole body just aches. To move a hair ached. To move my eyes, it ached. Like I just ached from head to toe. And I remember sitting there and thinking in my head, I want to slam my head into a wall, a brick wall, or a glass mirror to feel anything but this constant pain that I am going through right now. Like, I literally wanted to hurt myself to feel something besides this just lasting for days and months and years of pain. Um, I mean, I ended up after my fourth, I ended up admitting admitting myself to a psych ward in a hospital because I literally thought I was insane. I had been told my whole life that there was nothing wrong with me. I had been to ER visits. I mean, I probably have been to ER visits thousands, in the thousands. And every time they would say, it's in your head, there's nothing wrong with you, you're a hypochondriac, you're a pill seeker, Or I would get this quite often. They said, you have a lot of inflammation, whether it would be in my chest, whatever, but we don't know why.
Hmm.
That was when I did get an answer or somewhat an answer, it would either be you have a lot of inflammation, we don't know why, or you're constipated. Those were the only like answers to any of this. Um, a few years later, I think I was 32, I ended up getting a UTI, and I'm allergic to penicillin. So they had to give me antibiotics, and the antibiotics that they gave me obviously didn't work. And so I was on the antibiotics for 7 days. On that seventh night, I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I stood on the side of my bed, and my knees buckled. I could not stand on my feet. I couldn't. I could not stand. And I had a lot of pain in my back. So my husband rushed me to the ER. They first thought I had gallstones. They ruled that out. And then they said, you have a severe infection in your kidney. And they're like, we've never seen an infection this is bad. Like, no joke. They admitted me to the hospital, and that's when, because I was allergic to penicillin, they decided to do cultures. So someone from, I was living in the state of Nevada. He flew from California. He was a professional in some of these cultures. So he came and he took cultures for me and he grew them and he checked them at 24-hour, 48-hour, whatever. And they said that I had E. coli
Hmm.
in my kidneys, and they were shocked. And they were like, it must have been from your UTI, it didn't clean up and it moved to your kidneys. But I always knew that I had UTIs before and nothing like this had ever happened before. So I always knew something was wrong. I was in the hospital for almost 2 weeks trying to get this infection kicked. Um, and it was bad. And they were actually, right before they gave me the last antibiotic, they said, if this antibiotic does not work, we're going to take you to ICU and we're giving you penicillin. Like, we don't have a choice at this point. Thankfully, the Lord, that last medication worked. And I was was able to go home. But I do look back at that and I believe that porphyria had a lot to do with what was going on with my kidneys and possibly why it got so bad, because these toxins do havoc on our organs. And so after that, I had, like I said, that was when I was 32. And I would say I was still having ER visits, but I have to say, once I hit my 40th birthday, it was like someone flipped a switch with my porphyria, because literally days after my 40th birthday, my porphyria just went through the roof, through the roof. And I was in and out of the ER multiple times a month. So finally, one of those ER visits, I got an ER doctor that finally was like, okay, something's wrong. Because she saw a lot of inflammation in my large intestines. And she's like, that's not good. Like, something's going on with your digestive system. And so she gave me a referral to a GI specialist. And he got me in the next day. So she sent me home with pain medicine and nausea medicine. And the following day, I went into this GI specialist. His name is Dr. Baduya. Um, and he started the gamut of things, the normal, Crohn's, UC, IBS, like all of it. and for 11 months. And when I tell you, I was in his office at least 3 to 2 times a month, if not more. That was like 3 to 2 times was minimum,
Mm.
because I was having so much pain. I mean, literally, when I hit 40, it was like someone just lit a fire under my porphyria. I mean, it just went crazy. And so finally, after 11 months, he had done 2 colonoscopies and 1 pill cam. And everything he did, everything came back negative. Obviously, my white blood cell counts would show really, really low, or really, really high, it's depending, but that he could chalk that up to this because it would come back. It wasn't anything that stuck. But the only thing that he kept seeing was I had multiple inflammation spots in my small and large intestines. He
Mm.
biopsied them, they would come back clean. But he noticed that every time he would do a camera with a pill cam or gas, one, but he would notice this inflammation and it moved. It was always in a different spot, in a different location. And there was always multiple spots throughout my large and small. So if it wasn't for that, I think he would have gave up on me. But he saw that and he was like, okay, something is causing this.
Mm.
I mean, the inflammation that he saw, he's like, you have severe inflammation. This is not just a little. Um, And the one thing I noticed too is every time I had to end up having 3 colonoscopies. And the one thing I noticed too was that every time after I had a colonoscopy, I would wake up in the most excruciating pain of my life. Like I would wake up out of anesthesia from that screaming in pain. Um, and it's obviously once I got the diagnosis, he said, your intestines are sensitive. They're inflamed 24/7. So it's
Right.
like pouring acid into an open wound.
Right.
It's gonna be painful. So then he said, okay, we gotta figure something out, because from the beginning I was just talking to him about what had been going on since I turned 40, right? Because that's really when it kind of went crazy. And then finally, I told him, I don't know why this never came up, but I was like, this pain I've had since I was 13. It's just once I hit 40, it went for a loop. And he goes, so you've been having this pain since you were 13? I said, yeah, my first period. And so he finally sat down with me and he goes, okay, I want to know all of your symptoms from age 13 to today. And so we sat there for an hour and I explained everything that I experienced. And he said, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do some research and hopefully we're going to figure this out. He went home. He ended up calling me from his home,
Hmm.
um, and said, Ginger, can you be in the office tomorrow morning when we open? I said, yeah. And he says, I think I have an answer. And I was like, oh, I'll talk to you about it tomorrow, but I think I might have an answer. So I was like, okay. So I got there in the morning and I walked into this office and he's like, I think that you may have a disease called porphyria. He didn't pronounce it right. He didn't even know how to pronounce it. And I was like, okay, what is that? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I typed in all your symptoms. They all fit to this disease. It's a simple urine test. We're going to do it. And then let's go from there. And I was like, okay. So sure enough, 7 days later, came back positive. My levels were quite high. Um, and then started the lovely part of trying to figure out how to treat me.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't know. He didn't know about the disease. And so the first thing I got, because like I said, my doctor didn't know nothing about this. As soon as I did my genetic testing, um, Givlari, a rep from Givlari, somehow got my records and reached out to my doctor and said, this is what she needs. This is what you treat porphyria patients with, Givlari. And so he's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. First shot, I was in the hospital within 4 hours. And then I did another shot a month later, and I was in the hospital for 6 hours. Each time I was there over a week and had to have multiple multiple panhematin. But the first visit after my Givlari shot, my doctor and me had heard nothing of panhematin. Nothing. Didn't even know about panhematin. As far as me and my doctor knew from what the Givlari rep said, was Givlari was all you needed. That's what they told us. All you need is Givlari. You're good. So, um, when I went, when I got admitted to the hospital the first time, um, I I was just in excruciating pain, and they were getting ready to send me home. They were going to send me home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a diagnosis. Why are you sending me home? Like, and that's the frustrating thing about this disease is, when I got the diagnosis, I was excited at first. He's like, this is it. This is what you have. And I was like, you want to jump for joy. You want to go and see all the doctors that said you were crazy and that it was in your head. You want to run to their office and say, see, I told you. I told you. I wasn't lying. Like, I told you. But then you're suddenly hit with this wall of just utter, I felt frustrated and disappointed because yes, I had an answer, but my answer was a disease that most doctors didn't know about. So as soon as I got my diagnosis, I felt alone again. I was back to where I was before diagnosis. I've got to figure it out because not even the doctors know about my disease. So the diagnosis is bittersweet with this disease. It is bittersweet because to this day, I have a diagnosis. I have been to my home ER, my home hospital, and even to this day, after having a diagnosis for 2 years, and since being diagnosed, I have been hospitalized at this hospital for over 20 times in 2.5 years. And still to this day, at night, when I ask for my pain medicine, I have nurses saying, I don't think you need it, or not giving it to me.
Yeah.
So even with a diagnosis, I'm still fighting to get my treatment. And then I got blessed, and my GI specialist said, I think we need to get a hematologist on this because I don't know enough about it. And hematologists are who are supposed to treat this disease. So I was like, okay. And I was like, refer me to it. So he referred me to a hematologist. And when that office called me, thankfully, I had a gut feeling I needed to ask them. They called, they wanted to make an appointment, and I said, can you talk to your doctors and ask them if any of them has treated somebody with porphyria? Because I had decided at that point I was not going to any other doctor unless he knew what he was doing, or she. I was tired of living in pain for 31 years. I was tired of being told I was crazy. I was tired of people telling me it was in my head. And if I was going to go to a doctor, I was going to make sure he knew what he was doing. So that first doctor's office, they called me back and they said, I'm sorry, none of our hematologists have heard of porphyria.
Hmm.
And so then began the hunt of me calling all the hematologists around me. And I should have started right here in Williamsburg because I ended up finding my doctor here in the town I lived in. I figured I wouldn't just because it's so rare. But
Hmm.
I called my last hematology office to call was the one here in Williamsburg. And I asked her, I said, do you have a doctor that has treated porphyria patients? And she's like, I don't know. I got to ask. I said, well let me know. And if you do, call me back. I'll make an appointment with them. And so she called me back and she said, yes, we have a doctor that has actually treated porphyria patients during his studies and is well versed on it. And his name is Dr. Bozat. I said, perfect. Make me an appointment. The day I met Dr. Zhao, my life changed forever. For the first time, I'm gonna cry. For the first time in my life, the day I met him, I walked in that room skeptical, just
Hmm.
waiting for and just a jerk comment. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
that's what I've gotten for 31 years. And so
Right.
I went in there very kind of had a wall up. I'm like, we'll see. Let's see what he knows. And he sat down and he went over my records and he goes, wow, so recent diagnosis with AIP. I said, yeah. He goes, okay, have you been on pain medicine? Are you getting pain medicine? And I was like, I had my gastro doctor, every time I would have a flare, he might give me 3 days worth of pain medicine, you know? Um, but he wasn't giving me it regularly because he didn't know about the disease. And gastro doctors don't normally prescribe a lot of narcotics, you know what I mean? So, um, so that was the first question Dr. Zal said. He's like, are you on pain medicine? Where is your pain at? How are you functioning daily? And he asked me that and I cried. I cried. And he looked at me weird and I said, you do not understand that I've been waiting 31 years for a doctor to ask me that question. And I told him I'm in pain every day. Every day I'm in pain. I suffer from depression. I suffer from anxiety every day. I said it is a fight every day just to get out of bed. Um, and he said, all right. He said, we're going to get you on some pain medicine. We're going to get you on some nausea medicine, and we're going to start panhematin. Luckily, at that time, I had already had my port because Dr. Baduya did give me a few infusions of panhematin, but he had to send me somewhere. And the place that he sent me to, they were, it was a nightmare. My first experience with panhematin, they would mix it and they were marking the time, right? And when it came into my room, because thankfully, Desiree, I have to do a shout out for Desiree. Desiree taught me everything. She was the one that told me about panhematin. No, I didn't know anything about panhematin. When I was in the hospital that first time and they were trying to send me home, my husband called her and she got on the phone and she She ripped that whole hospital a new one. I tell you what, she made them move mountains to get me my panhematin. And she told them, you send her home in this attack, and she's still in attack. That's nerve damage happening to her body, and she can turn around and sue you. Make sure you watch what you're doing. You need to study this disease before you make a decision on what you need to do with her. I mean, she that first hospital stay, if it was not for Desiree, I don't know what I would have done. So, so I had already had my port because Desiree had told me about panhematin, and I told my GI doctor, and so he reached out to a place that does infusions. But the problem was, like I said, those first infusions, I was getting the bag, and Desiree taught me, look at the time stamp. That's really important. You want to make sure that it's in that window so it doesn't break down, because if you get it and it's broken down, it's not going to do anything. So I had that like in my brain. And so the first time I checked it, it had been mixed 2 hours prior.
Hmm.
And I told them, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And they were like pretty much forcing me to take it. And at that time, I mean, Desiree had taught me a lot, but I still didn't know a lot. You know what I mean? So my first few months of infusions were awful. I would have severe migraines for days after an infusion. I would be puking my brains out for day after infusion. I could barely get out of bed. The panhematin was making me sick.
Hmm.
Um, so at that point, that's when I told my GI doctor, I'm like, they're not giving it to me properly from what, because obviously I got on panhematin. I watched the video. I watched the video that American Porphyria has about giving panhematin. And I kept trying to tell them, like, this is what you're supposed to do. But of course, they went to medical school, so they know everything. And they wouldn't listen. So that's when my doctor was like, we got to get a hematologist. We got to get somebody that knows how to give you this properly so it can help you. So, I mean, that's what Dr. Zhao, as soon as I came to his office, I did an infusion that day. And in the beginning, I was doing 3 a week for a while. And then I got to 1 a week. And then I thought I was brave. And my husband had retired because I got diagnosed with this. And we have a toy hauler, and we've always wanted to do a trip across the country.
Hmm.
And so I told Dr. Zhao, I said, I'm going to be gone for 6 weeks. And he's like, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm thinking, I'm like, Dr. Zhao, I've lived with this disease for 31 years. Like, I'll make it. I mean, I'll be okay. I took my medical book with me. He wrote out how to treat me if I went to the ER, and put his number there, everything. I was ready. I had my medicine, so we were good. Mind you not, that was not a good idea.
Hmm.
I have not done that since. I understand that I have to get to where I can go 6 weeks without confusion. One thing I've realized with this disease is it is a life dedication almost. I mean, you really have to, it's life changing. It's life changing. Um, I have to think about the foods I eat, think about how many carbs I'm getting. Did I get enough carbs? Did I get enough sugar? Um, and then once you get the food down, you got to keep it down,
Hmm.
which is not an easy task in itself. So, but the one thing that I have learned since diagnosis, is uh, at first, before diagnosis, I looked at this, I knew I had something. I looked at it as my enemy. My husband would always say, like, if he was walking into the kitchen, he'd say, what do you want? Do you need anything? I'm going into the kitchen. And I would make a joke and I would say, a new body. I need a new body. Can you get me a new body? And that was a running joke in our family. I need a new body. Um, but then once I got a diagnosis and I realized I had an answer to what was going on in my body, what my body was going through. And I sat there and read all the symptoms and everything fit. Everything. There is not one symptom that this disease has that I have not had. I've had them all. I've had the heart palpitations. I mean, everything. I've had everything. And I realized in that moment how strong I was. I had that aha moment. Like, Ginger, you're kind of a bad, I won't say the word. You know what I mean? Like, when you realize what your body had went through for 31 years and you didn't have
Mhm.
any pain medicine, you didn't have any treatment, and you just pushed through every day, I think I did. I got a chip on my shoulder. I was like, I'm pretty, I'm a pretty strong person. Um, that I've made it through this, you know?
Yeah.
And it actually just gave me more confidence. And I know that's so weird to say a disease gave you confidence, but that's exactly what AIP has done for me. I never realized how strong I was. I never realized that how determined I am, until I realized what my body had been going through for 31 years. This is crazy to me. I think every person that has this disease is a freaking hero to me. Truly an amazing hero. I mean,
And yeah, there's just so much there. And I appreciate you taking us through from start to present about everything you've been through. It's just been so much. And
mhm,
it's hard to even pack in 31 years in our 40-minute conversation so far,
I
I'm
know.
sure.
Hmm.
But I mean, when we talk about strength too, and just what you've had to overcome, and obviously had a chance to meet your husband Charles for a little bit, and he was kind of helping you get situated here. And I saw some social media,
Yeah.
and he's in some of your videos because you do a great job of advocating for porphyria. And for everybody watching,
Hmm.
listening, I mean, jump on TikTok and
Hmm.
search up porphyria awareness. You will find her and her videos, so be sure to do that. But I wanted to kind of switch gears to the support system aspect, because your husband seems like a wonderful supportive human being, and you can see that being poured out of all the videos that he's a part of with you.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the pieces of him helping you set up this computer, and me listening to you both interact with each other, and he's correcting you on timelines that things actually happen because he's so in
Hmm.
it, he's so clocked into it. And I just
Yeah.
wanted to ask you how important it's been to have such a wonderful support system like him.
Um, well, I say I got super lucky with him. One, he is just a very compassionate and loving and God-fearing man. And he is American hero. He was a fighter pilot. He flew F-16s for 20 years, fought in many wars. So he is my true American hero. But my husband, actually, before we got married, he was diagnosed with MS. And MS is the reason he finally retired from the military, because once he got his diagnosis with MS, he couldn't fly anymore. So I, I don't want to say I'm happy my husband has MS, but in a way, it's been a blessing because he knows exactly how I feel. Because so many people with this disease do get misdiagnosed with MS because they mimic each other so much. Like my husband, he gets the MS hugs around his abdomen. We do, but it's with higher flaming hot bob wire. You know what
Mm.
I mean? But I mean, so that's, I think, a big reason why we work so well together, is because even when I met him, I knew he had MS. I did not know I had porphyria, but I dealt with chronic pain all the time. So I was very sympathetic to him. and and immediately became his caregiver. And then now we're each other's caregiver. We just pray often that porphyria and MS don't decide to get pissed off at the same time,
Mhm.
because then we're gonna have some problems.
Yeah.
Luckily, every time he's had an MS issue, I'm usually doing okay, and if I'm having a porphyria issue, he's usually doing okay. But yeah, so I think him having MS, um, and the crazy thing too is the whole 12 years we were married. Well, I got diagnosed when we were married 10 years. So the whole first 10 years we were married, and he was taking me into the ER because of all this pain and everything. We would joke. It was a joke, and we would laugh. He's like, "Babe, I swear you have MS." I said, "I know, right? Would that not be crazy?" I mean, I knew I didn't, but he's like, "You have to have MS." Like things would happen, and he's like, "It sounds like MS." And I was like, I know, but then I had a lot of other things that MS doesn't have. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, he is having him retire too. Like I think of so many people out there that have this disease and their husbands have to work, and well, I was one of those. My husband had to work, and I had four little kids, you know. Um, Having a caregiver with this type of disease is a godsend. It 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 truly is. I mean, I don't know what I would do without him, because sometimes too I need him, because since I've lived in pain for 31 years, I'll be experiencing pain, and it's like I don't realize it because it's a constant. And so
Mhm.
he'll see me limping, or he'll see me like not moving as smoothly, because I'm trying to compensate because of the pain. And he's like, "Are you in pain?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Because when you're in pain for 31 years, it just becomes,
Normal,
it's just like
unfortunately.
having your arm. It's just like having your
Mhm.
arm. It's just, that's life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So sometimes, I know I don't even realize I'm in pain. And I'm really happy that I have him, because um, I've noticed if I'm in pain and I don't take my pain medicine right away, my pain will get to a level that I can't get control over it to get it down.
Mm.
So having him to say, "Babe, are you in pain? Take your pain like, you know, um, that's a life that helps a lot." And like recently, they just switched up my pain meds. So as of a month ago, even on pain meds, I was never below a 4, ever in my life. Well, I take that back. I'm sorry. The only time I was below a 4 is if I was admitted and I was on IV meds. Only time. But Dr. Zhao, he just changed my pain medicine, because, after you're on a pain medicine for so long, it kind of stops working. And he
Mhm.
just changed my pain medicine. And for the first time in my life, my pain gets me down to a 1.
Hmm.
And that's, uh, I cry thinking about it. It's so this last month for me has been the best month of my life since I was 13, of my life,
Hmm.
with when it comes to the pain. This last month I've had very mild flares, very mild. Um, and my pain medicine has been able to keep them under control, keep my pain at a minimum. And um, that's one thing I want for so many patients. And the thing is, I mean, it's taken me a year of up to 3 infusions, the minimum being 1 infusion a week for 2.5. I mean, for I've been with Dr. Zhao for about a year and a half, but I mean, well, no, it's been about 2 years. But I mean, you can get to this point. You can
Mhm.
get to a stable point. I believe that, but the problem is this beast, that's what I call it, porphyria, the beast of porphyria is not easy to tame. And it takes a long time, a long time. And I just tell everybody out there, don't give up. Don't give up, you know. Um, just and two, the one thing I try to tell people is find your trigger because everyone's different. Find your triggers. I found through my journey, my trigger is lack of sleep and stress.
Hmm.
They will throw me in the hospital every time. Those are my two biggest stressor is lack of sleep and stress for sure. So, I mean, I'm really thankful that I have my husband. Caregivers with this disease is a must. And that's why I'm thankful for the community I found with this disease because there are people that don't have those caregivers and uh, me and I know a lot of other people reach out to them and checks on them and make sure that they're okay. And if they need anything and there's anything I can do to help, I'm there because this disease cannot be tackled alone. It
Hmm.
can't.
Hmm. And to go over kind of how the kids situation. So you have four kids, and
Hmm.
of course they grew up with you in this chronic pain all the time, and then you were diagnosed way later with porphyria. How is it
Hmm.
just living with them, kind of teaching them the ways of how it's been working with your chronic pain and just kind of handling that? Because I know there's a lot of people watching that maybe they want kids in the future, or maybe they just started having kids and they're trying to figure out
Yeah.
how to bridge some kind of gap without, making it scarier than it is, even though it is scary. But I mean, as a parent, going to your kids and being like, how do you maneuver that? So I'm just curious what your mentality is for that.
Um, for me, when I decided to have kids, I didn't know I had this disease.
Right.
So I had no knowledge. But raising kids with this disease, a schedule. I'm telling you, I had to have a schedule. I had to because when you're in pain, I knew, okay, in the morning, I'm like, okay, all I got to do is change their diapers, get them fed, and then it's cartoon time. You know what I mean? And I can put them on the couch and I can try to get a minute to myself to get my pain under control. So like schedules, I live for every
Yeah.
little, okay, once I do this, I can put them down and take care of me for a second. Um, and then the other aspect is obviously as soon as I was diagnosed, I said both of my daughters have it. I know they do.
Hmm.
Because there was a joke in our family because they do believe that I got this from my father. And my maiden last name is Wright. So there was a joke, because he has brothers, and my grandma Ginger, who I was named after, it was called the right stomach. We had weak stomachs. That was the myth in our family
Hmm.
because everybody had stomach pains and everybody had aches and pains in their body. And we just chalked it up to the Wrights got a bad gut. We got a bad gut. This is we were just born with a bad gut. It was that, I mean, that's how it was. So
Hmm.
when my kids started having a lot of the same symptoms as me, I was like, well, they just got my sensitive gut, I guess. Because
Hmm.
people have to understand, you know, when you're telling doctors for 31 years that you are in pain, and the doctors and the parents, your parents and your aunts and your uncles and you know, not all not all of them because some of them felt something was wrong, but majority of your family is saying you're hypochondriac. You're fine. You're fine.
Hmm.
And a lot of the reasons that my family was saying I'm fine is because they had all the same pains and they lived through it. They're like, you'll
Hmm.
get through it. You'll get through it.
Yeah.
It's just part of life. You know what I mean? So at some point, it's human to start thinking you're crazy. There was a time in my life I did. I thought I was crazy. I thought it was in my head. Because at some point you go to hundreds of, I mean, I have been to hundreds of doctors, and all of them say there's nothing wrong with you. At some point, you got there. At some point, you're going to start believing them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I've tried to teach my kids, um, is no matter what any doctor ever tells you, if you hurt, there's a reason. That is our body's way of telling us something is wrong. And I said, listen to your body before anyone. I don't care if they're the best doctor in the whole world. You listen to your body. And that's one thing I advocate for my kids very much. Now, both of my daughters, after I was diagnosed, they both were diagnosed. Um, the one thing that we found out, when I was diagnosed, when I got my genetic testing back, they said, we believe you have AIP, but we're not sure. And I was like, what do you mean? And they
Hmm.
said, well, your variant popped in AIP, but it's a variant that we've never seen before, ever, ever.
Hmm.
And so I was like, well, do I have it? And they're like, well, yeah, you have it because you got a positive urine test. Um, but this is a variant. It popped in AIP, but it's a variant we've never seen. And so I was like, okay, so what should I do? And they said the best thing to do is get some other people in your family tested. If they come back with the exact same variant, then that means we found a brand new variant in AIP that we've never known of. And so that's what happened. My girls got tested. They have the exact same variant as me. And they said
Hmm.
that me and my two daughters are the only ones that have this three variant. And it is in AIP. And I said, so what does that mean? And she goes, it just means all of your line of family, no one has ever been tested in your family, ever. And
Hmm.
that's why we've never came across your variant. So they were like, so my husband's joke is he's like, not only did my wife get a rare disease, now she's a unicorn of the disease because she came out with a new variant.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot of variants out there that we don't know about this disease. I think there's going to be new
Mm-hmm.
variants popping up everywhere. It's
Yeah.
just because it's not being tested enough. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think
So,
there's anything special about my variant. It's just
have they,
new.
so how are the kids? How are the kids dealing with it? Have they been symptomatic? Are they asymptomatic?
So my daughter, Tori, she's my firstborn. She was the one that I had no issues with the pregnancy. She has a very mild case. Most of her issues, I mean, she did get the stomach. I'm not saying she did get the stomach pain and the back pain, but what was the gnarliest for her was her headaches.
Hmm.
And we think it's because some people, when they're under a lot of a pain, they develop these migraines. And so I think her just being under pain, but she gets really bad migraines, but both of my girls see my doctor, Dr. Bozal. We all go to the same doctor. And Tori gets infusions every 2 weeks. My other daughter, Trisha, she just gave birth to a baby. He's 6 months old. She almost died in delivery due to porphyria. We almost lost her. It was a very scary, very, very scary delivery. Um, and yeah, it was not good. But so she's getting infusions multiple times a week and has been since giving birth because she still just hasn't got her porphyria under control. So, um, she's still having some issues. She has gotten a little bit better. Like I do see her getting better. It's just a slow progress. And then my boys, I have one son that has complained since puberty of severe leg pain. And I took him to the pediatrician and they kept saying it was growing pains.
Mm.
Um, he he hasn't got tested yet. He's an adult. I'm leaving it up to him. It's his choice. But yeah, I think he may have it. And if he does, I think it might be not as, I think it might be mild like my daughter Tori. But then I have one son that shows no symptoms at all of anything. I
Hmm.
Nothing. And the thing is when I got diagnosed, all my kids were as of age. So if I got diagnosed before they were age, I would have made them all get tested. But they're adults, so it's their path, it's their journey. I'm always here encouraging them that they should. It's just my two boys. You know, boys think, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
But, and then obviously my grandson, he's 6 months old, he's a boy. So when he hits puberty, we'll get him tested as soon as possible and go from there. But I do tell people, I have had people ask, why did you have kids? I said, well, first, I didn't know I had this disease when I had kids. But
Mhm.
second of all, even if I did, I would have still had my kids because early detection, early diagnosis is key. Um, my girls got diagnosed. Tori was 23 and Trisha was 21. That's pretty good. And thankfully, my grandkids to come, they'll be tested at puberty. So, I
Mhm.
mean, this disease is, you can function. It's just getting the treatment and doing what you need to do to take care of your body. And
Mhm.
like now, when I came to Dr. Zhao, well, before I was even diagnosed with this, I did have some my liver is damaged some. And so Dr. Zhao just recently put a referral in for me to get on the liver transplant list. Not that
Mm.
I need it anytime soon, but mine is hepatic. My AIP is hepatic. So I will have to get a new liver. So he wants to get me on as the sooner the better because it will take time. So
Mhm.
that's my next process. I will be getting on the liver transplant list
Gotcha.
just because I can't get it from my family because my husband has MS and most of my kids have porphyria. So
Right. Right.
I gotta source it out.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up in a little bit is just if there was somebody listening or watching right now that maybe early in the process doesn't know they have it, maybe they're further along in the process and just don't have it under control yet. What piece of advice would you give them right now?
Um, the main advice I would give them that I have learned is to get your disease under control. Everybody's story is different. Some people take years and years and years. So understand that there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Um, I just can't promise you how long or how short it will be, but there is a wonderful life to live with this disease for sure. And porphyria patients are not weak people. They are all fighters. They are all very, very strong, strong people. And trust me, if you have this disease, you can get through it. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it will get better. I promise. It gets better.
I think that's wonderful advice, and I think when you were saying that, I was thinking about just how your doctor diagnosed you initially was going over your history from the age of 13 to the age of 42, and just really buckling down and figuring out, okay, you had this, you had this, you had this. So something I would even encourage is for people who maybe are with doctors who aren't listening that are saying it's all in your head, like the majority of them do, and their
Hmm.
unwillingness to obviously learn more about it is to put yourself in that doctor's shoes that helped you and take your whole
Yeah.
history, throw it on Google, throw it in AI because we have that these days,
Yeah.
and not always trust the results, but let it be a starting point to dig further. And then, yeah, reach out in your area of all the hematologists and say, hey, just
Hmm.
found this on Google, said I could have it. Are you willing to check if I do have it? And then
Well,
it's
well,
so.
the other thing I did want to mention this because this is one thing that I really advocate on my TikTok and I think is a big, big issue right now with porphyria patients is I hear from hundreds of people daily that say, I got tested, but I got a negative. And the
Mhm.
first thing I ask them, did you pee in a clear cup? And all of them say yes. So even doctors that are finally giving the test, they are not doing it properly. And so one
Mhm.
of my biggest messages with my TikTok, if there's one thing that I can ingrain to every one of my viewers is you can get a false negative, but you cannot get a false positive. So I say if you get negatives, because if you're not in a flare, you can get negatives. Make sure that you're having somewhat of discomfort, pain when you take it, and make sure that cup is dark. I mean, I have a cousin that actually, this is what's so crazy. She just took the urine test
Mhm.
and they did it in a clear cup and it still came back positive.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they're getting it retested. We're going to retest her in a proper cup. But yeah, it still came back positive.
Hmm.
So yeah. So, but yeah, that's the one thing that is my biggest fear is there are doctors out there that are testing for it, but they're not testing correctly.
Mhm.
And they're getting false negatives and then moving on.
Right. Right.
And that's that's the biggest thing. I want everybody to know it has to be a dark cup. I want to scream it from the rooftops. It has to be dark.
Mm.
That's the one thing that I wish I could. I try to push a lot because the
Yeah.
thing is I think there's hundreds of people getting tested, but they're getting a false negative and moving on, and
Mhm.
that's not good.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you too, just again for everybody listening, watching. I mean, is there anything that maybe we didn't touch on that maybe you wanted to touch on that you wanted to bring up to people that are listening and watching, or did you think we covered it?
I am sure I'll stop talking to you and I'm like, dang it. But every time I do anything like that, I just kind of let the Lord guide me. And what comes out was meant to come out, I guess. I just I guess that's one thing I would have to say is this disease has taught me how strong I am. It has furthered my relationship with the Lord. It has made me look at life and appreciate life in a whole different way. You know, when you deal with a chronic disease, things that most people get down about, we're like, "Psh, nothing,
Mhm.
nothing." You know what I mean? This disease has taught me not to stress on the small stuff and enjoy the little small moments
Mhm.
and be present. That's one thing I haven't. Before diagnosis, I wasn't a present person because I was in pain. I wasn't present. I wasn't present with my kids, and that breaks my heart. I lost this disease robbed me of a lot of special moments with my kids because I was so in pain. Um, it's robbed me from a lot of moments in my life, but now I have a diagnosis. It will not rob me from anymore. It won't. I won't let it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good message to leave people with. But I wanted to thank you, of course, for taking the time. I know it took us a little bit to hop on here and chat, but I'm glad we were able to make the
Yeah.
time, and for you to pour everything out there from the age of 13 until present time and fill in all the gaps. I appreciate it. I know everybody else will. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah. And I know I'm a rambler. That might be good that I'm an advocate for this disease because I can talk forever.
No, it's good. Very good.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate, and I appreciate all the podcasts you do and all the work you do for this disease because we need a lot more people like you because at the end of the day, especially being a patient with a disease, I would rather talk to another patient than a doctor.
True. Very true. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with friends, family, or anyone who could benefit. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your preferred platform. It helps us spread awareness, and we would be extremely grateful. You can also follow Rarely Discussed on Instagram, YouTube, as well as TikTok. If you're someone seeking diagnosis for porphyria, visit porphyriafoundation.org to receive a free doctor packet, forms for free DNA testing, and a list of doctors in your area. Stay tuned for more episodes of Rarely Discussed.